in his face, and he completes it. Truesdell fumbled the football. Is picked up by New York with room to run. Summers working his way to the end zone. Hit near the goal line. Is he in? Touchdown!
Out of the pocket is Walker. Wide open is Mobley again. This time they connect. Touchdown, Roughnecks.
Tamu looking end zone. Back of it. It is
touchdown.
Caught. Touchdown, St. Louis. Alonzo Russell and a 9-yard strike from Tamu.
Darnell Jones, they flip. Back to Rodgers. Back to Jones. A man wide open down the sideline. It's Kari Lee. 5. Goal line. Touchdown. DC defenders with some razzle-dazzle.
Welcome, football fans. This is February 11th, 2020. This is For the Love of Football, and this is the XFL Show. I'm Alan.
I'm Jake.
I'm Vince.
And I'm Bryant.
Week 1 is in the books, and the results are in. Football Reimagined resulted in 4 games that were absolutely captivating. This is episode 112. Give us more of that, please. Oh, my goodness. Week 1 delivered and then some. It was better football than I personally could have imagined. It was more exciting than I could have imagined. And this isn't just me spitting hot air. Jake, we've arrived and it delivered. And I have so much to say today. I am so excited for this show. Probably more excited than I've ever been.
Yeah, and like I was anticipating last week, we are closer than ever to week 2 of the season.
Yeah, we are. Week 2 is going to be very interesting now that we've seen these teams, and now there's, well, a lot on the line for some of them. Going 0-2 in the XFL will not be good, and we're going to be breaking down what some of these teams have to look forward to going into their week 2 prep. Vince, the football I thought was good. The broadcasts were interesting. Being in DC was electric. How are you feeling coming off all 4 games?
I'm feeling pretty good about it. I can't wait to talk about it. You know, as you know, we've waited 2 years to finally see these games played, and just like any other Americans nowadays, we've waited 2 years to break it all down and discuss it. And so I'm just chomping at the bit to get at this thing. Just an excellent weekend, I would say, overall.
Oh, man, and Bryant, you got to watch them all from the comfort of your own home with your brand new baby girl. You are going to, I'm hoping you're going to be going to an XFL game soon, but even if you don't in a week or so, you still got, I thought, an experience unlike anything you've ever seen when it came to the television.
Holy hell, anything can happen in the XFL was all weekend long, because I'm so trying to wrap my head around exactly what I was watching, because the wife was even with me watching football and she was excited. She said, this doesn't look anything like I've seen before. It was a lot of fun. Alan, I will be going to the Wildcats game this weekend, so catch me there.
Yes.
But yeah, the baby girl was enjoying it as well. She really stayed quiet during the game. She knew when to fuss and when not to fuss.
Well, I'm happy you're going to get to the game, man, because it was very cool to be in DC. And then, well, I'm greedy, so I double dipped and went to New York as well. And I had the time of my life with my fiance. She has a phone in her hand. She'll be looking away and not paying it full attention. Eyes were glued to the field because she was very interested in all the different rules as well and the spectacle of it all. And I thought overall the feedback, at least online, was really awesome. And then the numbers are coming in. We're going to get into all of it plus all the football. 724-565. 4XFL is the number to call, at XFL Show on social media. If you ever want to reach us, that number I gave you, the XFL Fan Line, that's open all the time. That voicemail for you to leave a message and give us your thoughts on the games. We want to hear from you directly. You could talk to us, 724-565-4XFL. But at XFL Show, Bryant, woo, Nelly, the social activity we're going to get into, we were really blowing up on that. And, of course, at XFL 2020, everybody talking about number 1 trend worldwide. I mean, that was electric on Saturday. That's the word of the weekend. Not just because of those bolts on the Defenders logos. They looked awesome too. But my, oh my, everybody talking XFL. And this Tuesday morning show will be a regular edition where we recap the week, recap the games. Of course, the late Thursday night show coming up later this week, we will be previewing week 2. So a lot of recap, a little bit of preview for the whole week. And then, of course, we'll get you that Thursday night show. But let's dive into some of what went down in week number 1 in the XFL here as we dink and dunk a little bit around the league.
We're trying to make some stuff happen, and they're doing a little extra pushing and shoving. We're trying to get a job done.
Well, that was Dylan Day of the Seattle Dragons, and an instant classic, Vince. Instant viral sensation that's one of the big highlights I think for people took from the weekend. That was the access. But Dylan Day's moment there with the F-bomb, obviously something a lot of people were talking about.
Yeah. I took, I love taking the temperature of different rooms. And I was talking to tons of different groups of people today of what their thoughts were about these games. And one of the first things they talked about it was, wow, it's awesome to see, the kind of insight that you get into what's actually happened down on the field, the insight that you get up in the replay booth, the interaction with the officiating, hearing the coaches call some of the plays. I mean, it's just stuff that, you'd love to see, but you just never get with the NFL. And it was something different and people liked it.
Okay, that's great, Vince, and all. Totally cool. But this league is about the fans, and no one was as hyped as this man right here.
Day of the XFL Football League, baby. This is the answer to the NFL offseason. Holy shit, Houston drops back, and quarterback fires a damn missile down there, son, and he catches that son of a This is NFL-type play right here. XFL, I did not expect this kind of play from the XFL. Holy shit, they got some quarterbacks in this league. Look at that damn catch. He goes up there and says, I got the grocery, son. I'm going to the house.
They do have some quarterback. They got some bleeping quarterbacks in this league is probably the quote of the weekend. You're right, Brian. That was amazing.
A lot of and they're going to the house. Right? Jake, I'm sure you were in front of your television doing the same thing on Sunday when you got back home because it was a lot of fun to watch.
Something like that, I guess. That individual we heard there, a very vocal, excited fans. But I mean, remember watching some of these games, there were those renegade fans painted up all blue, with the train robbing bandanas over their faces. I saw some gargoyle fans with Batman mask and even dressed up like gargoyles. We had shields up in DC whenever we were there. And I want to see what the home crowds do. And especially I'm looking forward to Seattle. We heard that possibly they're opening up more seats and, they're Dragons. I expect pyro, flames, smoke, maybe even a real life dragon. A dragon flyover, possibly.
All of it. Dragons are real. I can't wait. Oh, man, the fans all over. I mean, I was in New York, and their crowd was living it. I mean, in the stadium, they were, having a good time, drinking, screaming, Guardians, best chant of the weekend, even better than DC. Whoop, whoop.
What about Go for 3?
Go for 3 was, obviously, all the listeners that were in attendance in DC chanting that. Shout out to all of them. Appreciate them.
While we're on the topic of chants, I mean, how refreshing was it to hear these teams chanting for their own, the fans chanting for their own team instead of just chanting the letters of the promotion? Maybe that's how you know that your particular team is getting over in your particular town.
It does make sense. And you know what? These fans were having a great time. I mean, they weren't just there, to spectate and, see what it's all about. They were in it. They were a part of it. And that's what the league's all about. I mean, at the Guardians game in the parking lot, they, they stole a little bit from the Bills Mafia, but someone went through a table at MetLife Stadium, Vince. That's how excited people were.
I'll say this, one of the most shocking moments of the week for me, and Jake, I know you noticed this as well, is, as soon as we got out of the car at Audi Field, you see just whole van loads of families getting out of their vans or trucks, and they're all decked out head to toe in DC Defenders gear. The whole family's already had all the swag ready to go cheer on their team. I did not expect that.
You're right. Early. They were dressed for success. They were drinking. They were grilling. They were barbecuing in the parking lot, and that was pretty early. Right whenever we were getting ready to walk into the stadium.
Yeah, a little glimpse.
Can I ask you one?
Oh, go ahead,
one
Brian.
question. How was that blizzard in New York for opening week? Just curious.
The blizzard, it was beautiful out. What are you talking about?
Oh, yeah, that's right. A beautiful day in New York City for game one. I just remember there was always talk about blizzards and how the weather was going to be crappy. The XFL stayed in the right markets, DC and New York, for that first week because those fans and those stadiums were pretty electric, especially with those videos that you posted on Twitter, Alan, that you were out there. Did you guys keep those shields? You get me one, by the way?
Maybe you could have mine. I'm still thinking about it. I don't know. Yeah, it looks pretty nice up on the wall right now. I'm gonna hang on to it at least for a little bit. I'll get back to you about it. Let's go over some of the injuries real quick. Brandon Silvers did get a little banged up at the end of that game with Seattle and DC. Vince, we were there. We saw him go down in a heap. You said, "Oh, his Achilles is torn," and then he, walked off the field. So obviously that's not what happened. But you gotta think Silvers going down like that at the end of the game, getting banged up a little bit, roughed up, not very good for Seattle at quarterback. From what you saw of him, I don't know when we get into it later and talk about the game a little bit. Do you think less than 100% Brandon Silvers is a liability?
I don't know. I mean, I'll say this. I didn't think that the Seattle offense was all that bad. They exceeded my expectations. And he did walk off the field. I think it was, probably a little precautionary there, but I think he's going to be okay. But we'll have to see what the injury report says.
Yes, and the other bad one we saw visually, no word yet exactly on the status of tight end Cole Hunt from St. Louis, but he was carted off the field, Jake, after getting penalized too. Kind of insult to injury. That was tough to watch, but that injury resulting from just a player that was probably just too hyped to be out there for week one, a little bit too excited.
There was a lot of that going on around the league, including one ejection.
We did have one ejection, only one across the league. So that was that I guess is now the standard.
That's less than what we saw in training camp.
It's yeah. So and I don't know if they interviewed that player though when they got kicked out, but we'll have to go back. Yeah, I don't think they did. So, but oh man, they were getting all other kinds of interviews, ESPN and Fox. And we're gonna get into that. Let's go to the transaction side real quick, and the big one. As of earlier this morning of this live on tape podcast, Pepper Johnson, the defensive coordinator, former defensive coordinator of the LA Wildcats, fired today, Bryant, by Winston Moss. LA gave up, a lot to the Houston Roughnecks in that week one outing. And I have to say, honestly, I am totally shocked. I mean, that was week one. It was week one, and we knew the Roughnecks were going to have some kind of offense. With June Jones and all, they put 37 up on LA, and it gets Pepper Johnson fired?
Well, if you listen to the post-game press conference from Coach Moss, he was very, and I mean very, unhappy with his coordinators. Now, I think he praised Norm Chow a little bit for the play calling, maybe faulted the players for the execution of it all, but he was not happy with what his defensive coordinators
Let's play that right here. And Vince, Jake, you tell me, because it sounds to me when I hear this quote, this opening quote from Winston Moss, something was coming for one of the coordinators. I honestly, when I heard this part, didn't think it would be Pepper Johnson. It sounded like the special teams coordinator might have been getting it. But here's Winston Moss right after the LA Wildcats loss.
Early in the week, I gave my coordinators 3 rules, 3 principles. I said, win the turnover battle, win the field position battle, and win the explosive play battle. And we didn't do any of those tonight.
When I heard that, I thought, oh man, that sounded a lot like it was on Norm Chow for the offense. And then later on, he did praise the defense for keeping LA in the game. But in the end, it's Pepper Johnson, Vince, who got fired.
Yeah, to me, this is a really bizarre firing. Bryant, you're much closer to this team than any of us, and maybe you can shed some light on, if there was some trouble in this camp leading up to the game. But firing somebody after 1 week of a brand new league, a coach for poor performance. I mean, that is just, kind of outrageous to me. And I think it speaks a little bit to the fact that, this is Coach Moss's first ever game coaching, being a head coach, as far as I know. So yeah, maybe this is some inexperience, some panic setting in. I don't know. I just can't believe he'd do something like this. Very overreactionary, in my opinion.
Well, Alan, I mean, we saw Coach Moss in Houston and Pepper Johnson, and their relationship looks pretty good. I mean, there was no hidden turmoil, at least from what we could see in training camp there. I simply think it just comes down to the fact that I think Coach Moss thinks he can do the job better.
Yeah.
And he wants to do it better, and he wants to do it himself. And unfortunately, Pepper Johnson is at the same position that Moss thinks he could do better. And based on what we saw on Saturday night, Pepper Johnson had a great first half, but the second half, I think Coach Moss goes into it and even some more, saying they ran out of gas. Something was wrong. Houston was able to throw the ball all over the place on them. And there was some good look. Alan, you're right. When he played that, it doesn't sound like it's a defensive problem. Even during his press conference, it doesn't sound like it's a defensive problem. It did sound like he was blaming the offensive side of the ball.
That. I mean, they gave up more explosive plays. They lost. They didn't create any turnovers. I mean, it's. I think that goes both ways in what he was talking about.
Well, but he did praise the defense, like Alan was saying.
Yeah, I'm with you, Brian.
It's a little strange. I just really think sorry, Alan, just real quick. I just really think Winston Moss thinks that he can do this job better, and he wants that responsibility on his shoulders.
I'm with you on that, Brian, 100%. I think this is Winston Moss saying, you know what, let me just take over this thing anyway. I don't think this is a personal issue or anything. I would think Winston Moss wants his fingerprints on this defense. I think he sees that they could be good. He said as much in the press conference, and I think he wants to have total control of that defense, much like Kevin Gilbride has total control of that offense over in New York, Vince.
Well, just one more thing on Moss. With what you're telling me, that's a sign of a bad coach. You got a head coach's job is to coach the coaches to get the most out of his players. And it sounds like, he didn't do a very good job, and he's given up on a guy after, 1 week. That spells bad news to me.
I don't think this Wildcats defense is in trouble. I think Moss taking over, it might actually be a good thing. We'll see, because the Roughnecks looked good. They put up 37. They put up 37 points on the LA Wildcats, but a lot of that had to do with LA's anemic offense in the second half. And also LA held them 3 for 10 on third down for Houston, Vince, isn't very good. And that's what Houston did against that LA defense. They weren't very efficient. LA held them in check a little bit. They didn't get after the PJ Walker, and he's super elusive. You saw him ball out. No wonder why they couldn't. But I think Moss just said, you know what, I really want to be in total control of this thing. And in the XFL, the head coaches, they have that authority. So it's a shocking move. We'll see what happens with LA moving forward. Obviously, when you fire a coordinator after 1 week, that isn't a great look, as Vince has pointed out. But we've seen in the NFL teams do that, and things turn around pretty quickly.
There could, like I said, we're not in the locker room. There could have been a lot of stuff leading up to this that we just don't know about. I have to think that there was something. I can't fathom that this was a complete blindside move.
I mean, it is only week 2 of this league, and I think we have our first must-win game this week for LA.
All right.
I mean, after what happened on week 1.
Put up or shut up.
How can you think anything else?
I will be coaching like a crazy man.
And Winston Moss is going to have LA ready. We'll get into what the Wildcats have in front of them when we break down week 1 and start peeking ahead at week 2 here in a little bit. But that Pepper Johnson firing as defensive coordinator in LA, obviously the big news coming out the Monday morning after the first weekend of XFL football. Real quick, as we're dinking and dunking, winding that down here, Bryant, social media activity for the league. I wanted to get into some of this because it's the 21st century. It's 2020, and really some of the most fun you could have is enjoying something on television or at a live event with social media accompanying you. And the stuff I saw people putting out about the XFL during the games, after the games, before some of the games was absolutely hilarious, entertaining, memorable. And even your new baby daughter became a meme as a result. It was fantastic. And of course, the numbers exploded for the XFL's league accounts. And of course, even our @XFL Show on Twitter, a huge surge with people finally watching some XFL football.
You know, the XFL, you saw it instantly because I had my social media accounts up on my computers and on my phone for kickoff. And the second that new rule for the kickoff was displayed, Twitter blew up. People were like, this is what the NFL needs to do. Did the XFL just fix the kickoff for football? All these different things started posting. And in reality, it gave the XFL an even bigger boost than it already had leading into kickoff. But you're right. It was a lot of fun to see what was going on. The people down at the XFL headquarters were having a great time, I could tell, and doing a lot of fun stuff. Everybody was. Also, this XFL on Fox Twitter account that you need to follow if you're not already. That's a lot of fun there, too. And then, yeah, sure. I mean, Delaney, my little girl, she was out there with the Wildcats shirt wearing, she was born a Wildcats fan. What can I say? It was
she gets to punch every fan in the world if they looked at that picture because she did the old school high school. Oh man, that was beautiful. I loved it. The kickoff got a ton of love. One of my favorite tweets I saw. I wish I could credit who saw it. I saw it while I was at one of the games. But they said it was Step Brothers, the Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly, and it said, "Did the XFL just figure out the kickoff?" Yep, it was the big talk was the kickoff. Vince, everybody on social media loved the XFL kickoff. What'd they say on the floor down at work for you?
I mean, even before I got to the floor at work, people were texting me during the game. Yeah, during the first game, in the first quarter, people are saying this is something that, all football should have. This is how you should do a kickoff. People at work were talking about it. They absolutely loved it. Things actually happened on a play that's been almost extinct the past several years. People really excited about that. I'd say that and the instant replay situation with, all the exposure of the communication, how quickly it went, that stuff, those were the two biggest things that people were just buzzing about.
Yeah, it was really fun to watch the people talking on social media. And then our on-field videos we got to post. I look forward to that whenever we go to games. We'll try to, post some stuff from the field as much as we can. And I try to do my best. And that's I don't know if you guys saw the video I got of the Guardians pregame doing some bone crusher, jumping up and down. I ain't never scared.
I saw that.
The most hype thing I've ever seen pregame at a football game in my life. I had goosebumps. I also reminisced about playing Madden as a young kid, but still, the bone crusher pregame. The Guardians have to do that every single week, Vince.
Yeah, if that's your thing, and it worked for them.
Yeah, the crowd went bananas, too. As they were filing in, they saw their team jumping up and down like that, like crazy men. And boy, oh boy, did they played like crazy men. The Guardians look great. And we'll get into their game here in a little bit. But let's dive into two very, very big things we need to talk about here as we do each and every single week. It is time for our Cover 2.
Camp underway as we speak. It's all up for grabs. It is a true competition.
A lot of rules were released today.
This league needs to be different, and this is really what it's going to be all about. 52-man rosters are set.
It's exciting. It's going to be fast, which I think will be a lot of fun.
Did you hear? Who was that we just heard there? Brian, did you hear that? Who?
Is that Diana Rossini? I thought that was Rossini, right?
No. I thought
I heard McAfee. Heard Pat McAfee. Right,
yeah, the two other people.
I definitely heard him. Yeah.
The two other voices. You didn't.
Probably some yokels.
Vince McMahon, maybe.
No, that was
two guys that probably have faces for radio. Is probably what you're talking.
That was Vince and I made the Fox broadcast somehow. Played a clip as they were showing the lead up to the XFL. Vince, we were immortalized in the very first game aired on Fox television. In that little package they played before kickoff. And that made my weekend when I heard about that. And I didn't even see that because I didn't catch the LA-Houston game till about, 5 minutes after it started.
Yeah, it's because we know what the hell we're talking about here on This Is the XFL Show, which you could find at XFL Show on Twitter and other forms of social media. And you could also download at any podcast application that you may choose, or on YouTube for that matter, and also at XFL.com. But yeah, I just a tremendous broadcast for all these games. I didn't get a chance to go back and rewatch the game that we attended, but the broadcast that I did see, I loved every second of it.
Well, I'll say this, Vince, real quick. And Alan, I thought we were talking about the two important things. I don't know how much this is on the important scale during the cover too, but with those sleepless nights, I will say that I've been able to watch and rewatch some of these broadcasts over and over again in the last couple of days.
Oh, yeah, the rebroadcasts are awesome, and it is important because it was awesome that we were, a part of that. That was history to me, and also we need to toot our own horn, Vince and I, a little bit. So toot, and we do know what the hell we're talking about. At least I do, because my favorite part of the week, it was that I was 4-0, baby. When we made our picks on our Thursday night show, I got them all right. And I didn't get the scores right. Obviously, that's very difficult to do, but I got the winners. And my favorite part of the broadcasts, I have to say, were just the access and the Dylan Day stuff and the running and catching interviews like we heard, with Pat McAfee running down people. And, of course, Jonathan Hayes Bryant screaming, I don't care at one of his players who was getting in a fight. I mean, that was the best thing about the broadcast to me. What about you, Jake, watching it on TV?
Yeah, watching it, I actually like hearing the plays being called in from the defensive and offensive coordinators, whether they were, up in one of the booths or down on the field with a big beach towel around their neck. That's what I like the best.
Hal Mummy's beach towel? Would you, if that was sold on XFL Shop, would you buy a Hal Mummy beach towel?
Branded beach towel.
I don't know. I feel like he just got that from the hotel.
It looked like it was just a bath towel.
He took that from the hotel room before he came down. I really think that. Alan, my favorite thing, and I think I was texting you guys throughout this whole game because I was a little jealous that you were at the game and I was watching it on television. But I got to give you that little perspective from the TV, sitting at home. There was a fumble in that first game with the DC Defenders and the Seattle Dragons. And before the play was over, while they were scrumming for it, the camera was like in the scrum watching what was going on down there. I mean, it was incredible. I even tweeted out saying, holy hell, the access, unbelievable. It really just screams of different ways to watch a football game in different angles. Alan, Jake, actually, I will tell you this. And remember, I have a memory of an elephant, so just believe me on this. You had said we've already seen how the review referee does things. How much more can you do? All you do is flip that camera 180 degrees, and now you're seeing what he's seeing with this cool little Xbox controller reviewing the play in front of us. Made it so much better than what the AAF was doing during their broadcast.
Yeah, we saw him up at the booth, and that's actually something that you were mentioning before that I have on my notes about the cameraman staying on the field. Almost got taken out in that St. Louis game with that snap going over Tomu's head, and I'm wondering how long it's going to be until a cameraman just gets leveled on the field, because it looks like it's going to happen.
Yeah, I have to shout out to the cameramen, camera women, the referees, and the sideline reporters for their athleticism this weekend as well. Because what I also noticed during these games was how all those people were running around the field just as much as the players to give fans at home the access they were giving them. It was so entertaining. It was amazing. And my favorite tweet during the games, talking about all the access, all the stuff we got to see, this comes from @Jesse the Buckeye on Twitter. This is gold, and this is totally 100% correct. XFL Week 1 had multiple F-bombs on national television, on-field projectile vomiting, replay officials using Xbox controllers, fans in the stands eating rally cheese, which I didn't even see, but I heard about, a drunk streaker, post-game shotguns of hard seltzer, all that in, fans going through tables, and that doesn't even include the football, Bryant.
That cheese, by the way, wasn't even fully unwrapped. It was that American cheese that comes in that plastic wrapper. He ate that full on plastic as well. It was very interesting there. Alan, I will say this. I did put a tweet out there just after the first quarter, just to get some feelers out there on how everybody felt like the game was going. And the responses were, all I asked was, in one word, how would you describe that first quarter in the XFL? And so many people, electric, fast, interesting, dope, encouraging, legit. So many different words to describe that first quarter only. And that wasn't even, that was one of 16 quarters of football that we got this past weekend. So a lot of fun to be had watching this. Crisp, I even got one time.
Yeah. It's interesting to me, talking with people, is that, I didn't really hear hardly anything negative about this at all. I mean, yeah, little critiques here and there. Even I have some of my own. But, overall, people were, very interested. They loved, some of the innovations that we got to see. They want to watch more of it. They were saying it's a legit league. And what the most interesting part about all that response to me is that, if we're all being honest, these games weren't really all that exciting. It's not like they were came down to the wire, these back and forth contests that were going, toe to toe the entire time. Some of these games were either blowouts or we had, just some, anemic offense or, what have you. But at the end of the day, despite not being the best of games, people were still really into it and they want to come back for more. And I got to say this, the best is yet to come. So I think that's huge for the league.
Well, I think, maybe consistency-wise and score-wise, there were things missing, Vince, but all of these games had crazy, exciting plays, at least a couple of them. All of them did. Amazing athletic plays only professional football players are capable of making. And then we, of course, have the added factor of the new rules and the intrigue of week one. All that made for exciting game to watch on TV. And to be there live among the 17,000 plus in DC and the 17,000 plus in New York and across the whole league, it was between 17,000 and 18,000 people coming out to see these games. To be a part of those crowds, which are about equivalent to a lot of NBA arenas, a whole hell of a lot better than some of the MLB stadiums I've been in as of late when it comes to crowd size. To be a part of those crowds, to see them invest completely and just be there because they want to see some awesome football and they want to cheer someone on. The live atmosphere was equally as exciting as the unique broadcast, if not better for me, Jake. I got a double dip. I have to tell you, I want to be at a game every single week if I can, because they are so fun, so rowdy, these crowds. I don't know if it was week one or what. What do you think it was? Was it just angst? Or, they all just saw a whole NFL season. These people act like they haven't seen football for months.
Wow.
Well, it's DC. They haven't really.
That's true.
Some of them haven't seen it for years, to be fair. I think it was just the week one buzz. For the most part, the new kid in town, it's something new. But like Vince was saying, we did see a lot of merch, that these people were coming out of their cars with already. They were there to party. They were there for a show and hopefully to see their team win. And that's what a lot of people were looking for. Now, what's going to be much more telling, I know we didn't mention any specific numbers ratings-wise yet, but it's going to be week 2, week 3, week 6. Are these numbers going to sustain? Because even going back last year for the AAF, week 1 was pretty good, but unfortunately they never made it the whole way to the end of the season. So it's going to be very telling. Maybe not so much in week 2 because we're going to get some home openers from other areas, other teams where we expect the crowds to show up also. But going forward after that, for the return matches.
Well, that's something I wanted to bring up here, because you talk about ratings, you talk about attendance, the buzz. There are some of these markets that are going to be playing their first home game, obviously, this week. You have LA and Seattle. Now, I think Seattle, we already know, is doing extraordinarily well in their market. LA, maybe not so much.
Opened up more seats in Seattle. They've got so much buzz.
Exactly. So, but which of the 4 hosting markets in week 2 benefited from so much happening in week 1 in terms of the positive, or at least perceived positive feedback that everyone's giving the XFL? I mean, you have LA that everyone's like, okay, LA, I feel like LA has the most to gain because they also they have the most wiggle room there. But, everyone is kind of winning right now, even though there's only been 4 markets that have actually had a home game.
I mean, DC, I think, is going to just explode with interest, and
they'll look like a busted can of biscuits, I think, on Saturday. I mean, they're just going to be busting at the seams.
Yeah, fans are going to pack that stadium. It's the smallest stadium in the league, but the crowd was just. I mean, you were there, Vince. They were all about the city love, and to see a team that looked like the DC Defenders. I mean, that looked like one of the better teams in the league. When you win, people come out to see you, and they were already close to absolutely packing into the rafters. And I think week 2 against another good team in New York, it should be pretty close.
Yeah, I mean, you could go back and listen to our post game show that we did in the archives, and we talked about how there were only 17,000 announced to be there, and maybe not all of them stayed for the whole game, but they were loud at the beginning and they were loud at the end, and it was a fun atmosphere despite maybe some colder weather. So I think that's something to be excited about. Those smaller stadiums, we talked about it, that could really make for a fun atmosphere, and I think they got something going in DC.
Yeah, that's to answer your question, Brian, I'm definitely on that for week 2. Coming off of week 1, it's the DC fan base, but Seattle. I mean, obviously they've got an 0-1 team coming to town, so it's a very important game for them. But also the fans were already excited to see them, and I think the team showed enough to make you excited. The Dragons look like there's something there. Maybe more than we all thought when we were preseason predicting them to have the worst record. I think all of us did. I don't know about that anymore. So I think Seattle should have a pretty good buzz going as well.
Yeah,
not a buzz like the Guardians fans had in the stands on Sunday, but close, Jake.
I don't even think it matters that Seattle dropped that first game. I say the same amount of fans are going to show up. I don't think it's going to deter anybody.
Yeah, same here.
Week 1. I mean. It's you could easily recover. It's not like it's 0-5. I mean,
you go 0-2 though. We're about to get to this hot read coming up, and going 0-2 is going to be pretty detrimental to your season, I think. And I mean, I'll explain why. For me, at least, for some of these teams, going 0-2 might be the death nail, and I know that sucks. It's early on, but that might be the case. Week 1 had some great football around, so why don't we all come in and give some awards away? That's what you do at the end of a successful week, Vince. You give away awards, weekly awards, but we're going to do it differently here on This Is the XFL Show. We're going to make up our own awards and give them away each week, and I told you guys, come up with your own award so we could give them away each week and give some positive reinforcement to these players who are working so hard, these people around the league who are working so hard. So you could give an award away for anything you want, but that's your award, Vince. You comprehend? You get it? You understand the task at hand?
Yeah.
All right, Jake, are you on board?
I have my winner.
Bryant?
Oh, yeah.
All right, let's get it on. Finishing off our cover 2 with our weekly awards. We're going to give these away each and every single week. I'll get things started to get you guys going. And my award every week, I'm going to give away the This Was XFL Football Award. A moment that screamed XFL football this week. And for me, it had to be the moment where Pat McAfee lost his mind during the St. Louis Battlehawks Dallas Renegades game on a punt.
But whenever the wide receivers drop balls, you need a punter to save you with a perfect. What is he doing?
What in the world?
What?
Hey, Pat. Pat almost ran out there and bounded himself.
Oh, that was the perfect. Just stay off the ball. Just don't even touch it. Marquette just hit a perfect punt.
And Marquette King's epic punt ruined by Steve Boharnis and Pat McAfee losing it. And the best part about it, the reason why this was XFL football in a nutshell this week is because after the play, Pat McAfee got to actually go talk to Steve Boharnis about why he would think about touching that ball at the 1.
My man.
We got a flag on the play.
Incredible effort on a special teams play there. Ends up backfiring a little bit. What was going through your mind?
I thought he touched it, so I tried to get on the ball before he got on the ball, and then we went in the end zone.
Okay, Joey, you're 100% right. I can respect the hell out of that.
That is XFL football, Bryant, right there. A guy messes up on the field, go ask him, what were you thinking? And he gives you his answer, and everyone gets to get that clarity. As a football fan, it was beautiful.
I saw a tweet, Alan, that was pretty good that said, you get into a car accident. No one does nothing. XFL, how do you feel about that car accident you just got into? Right now? The XFL, just with their instant reactions, it's pretty solid. Kickers when they miss them, kickers when they make them, it's a lot of fun. Alan, I'll go into my award, though, if that's okay. Here's what I came up with. I came up with the Cutest Baby Award for this week. No, I'm joking. I didn't come up with that word. Okay, I've said many times on this show, I'm more of a professional in terms of talking about a startup league, not necessarily league playing football. So I came up with...
This is new territory for you. This is new territory.
Yeah, new territory. Right now. So I came up with the Who Made Bryant Look Good Award. And this week, I came up with an honorable mention, actually, Tim Cook, because I did mention last week that he would be great for fantasy because he's going to pound in those conversions. He did 2 of those this past week. But the Who Made Bryant Look Good Award this week goes to Nelson Spruce. I told you, if you're in a PPR league, 11 receptions, targeted 15 times, 103 yards, 24.3 fantasy points on DraftKings. So thank you, Nelson Spruce, for making me look somewhat good this week.
Oh, absolutely, Brian. You've been talking him up. Nelson Spruce, you've been saying look out for him for the LA Wildcats. He had a backup quarterback throwing to him a lot, but he was catching it a lot and was basically LA's offense. He was all their offense for a bit. I mean, he looked great, and I'm sure Vince DraftKings is probably going to rate him pretty high this week.
I would think so. Yeah, I have not checked those daily fantasy salary rankings, but I'm sure they will be coming out, and we'll be reporting on that on next broadcast.
Yes, Thursday night, late night Thursday night, we'll be talking a little bit about the DFS for you for sure in the betting side of things. But you got 2 down. So this was XFL Football Award goes to Pat McAfee and Steve Boharnis of the St. Louis Battlehawks for that great, beautiful moment. Bryant giving away the Who Made Bryant Look Good Award to Nelson Spruce of the LA Wildcats. Vince, what award you got?
It's the line of the week award from the various broadcasts, and this may end up being line of the year as far as I'm concerned. It certainly is right now, and it's going to go to none other than Plum High School's own Pat McAfee, and he flat out said it. The XFL is good for this country. There's no other way to sum it up better than that.
He's in the lead for my Mr. XFL award, by the way, that I picked.
Because that's what it's all about. It's about having some fun. I mean, oh my goodness.
It's like having fun, but taking it serious at the same time. And I think he's found a good combination of both.
It sounds a lot like this show.
That's true. And, I mean, we're sounding like a bunch of big Pat McAfee fans, which we are now. I'm sure all of us are. I mean, he's entertaining, but he's got 2 awards right now, Jake. You're cleaning us up here. Final award of the week.
Brian, would you say he's a 2-time?
Two-time award winner for the week, although he get maybe 1.5. He has to share that other one with Steve Boharnis. Jake, what's your award to round us out for our weekly awards?
Yeah, my award is going to be for the touchdown celebration of the weekend. No surprise here in the LA game. I believe this was the last time that LA was leading, but Brian, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Of course, I'm talking about none other than Jordan Smallwood, touchdown in the back corner of the end zone. And of course, just posing like only one other man can pose. And of course, we're talking about WWE's own Randy Orton, just the celebration of the week.
I flipped out
twice.
for it.
He did it after a conversion and he did it after a touchdown. So
making
2.
it his own. Yeah, making it his own. He's now the guy in the XFL who does the Randy Orton pose. And it's up there as maybe one of my favorite touchdown celebrations of all time. It was great. And maybe when he could get one of his teammates to, I don't know, like get a bunch of doves and throw them at him whenever he gets his next touchdown, Jordan Smallwood of the LA Wildcats, with the celebration of the week. I love it.
I hope it's different Randy Orton poses. Like, hope next week he goes down to his knees and does like the Cobra thing or the Viper.
Well, no, you got it. Well, he'd have to play for Tampa to do that, but I digress. So there you have it, the 4 awards of the week. This was XFL football, going to Pat McAfee and Steve Boharnis. Bryant's award, the Who Made Bryant Look Good award, to Nelson Spruce. Vince giving away the line of the week to Pat McAfee, who I have a feeling is going to win a lot of those. The XFL is good for this country. And Jake's celebration of the week to Jordan Smallwood of the LA Wildcats. And there you have it, this week's cover 2. Now we go into what will be some recapping, some looking ahead, and a whole lot of talking about these games we saw in week 1 in the XFL with this week's Hot Read.
Comes the pressure from DC, throwing to the left, it's picked off, intercepted, Bradley Sill down the sideline for another pick 6 for the DC Defenders.
All right, we're going to briefly recap each game and then also hit on what to look ahead for each team for this week going into week 2. And we're going to start with DC beating Seattle 31-19. We were there, Jake, to see the Defenders' big victory in front of their home crowd. They scored in all 3 phases of the game. And Cardale Jones, according to Pro Football Focus, was the most efficient player in the XFL in week 1. What stood out to you from that game for the DC Defenders and Seattle Dragons?
Well, and that's why I picked him to be my MVP of the year. I like the way it's going. Now, he's definitely got some competition whenever we talk Houston later, but he looked good in week 1. This was a winnable game for Seattle. They had the opportunity to, like we were saying on the post-game show, had the opportunity to make it a 1-score game, but points were voluntarily taken off the board, which one school of thought says never do that. A number of drops in this game, some passes that got away. We were talking about DC. Did they run 1 back or 2? I can't remember.
They had
just 1.
They had a fumble recovery and a pick 6 in this game, and the fumble recovery was on the punt block. That was the first touchdown in team history.
So yeah, it could have been a lot closer. But DC, they made the win happen, and they got New York coming into town next week.
I like what you said there, Jaker, in that, this game was much closer than, maybe the box score would lead you to believe. If it wasn't for, 2 defensive/special teams touchdowns, this is a tie ball game here. Plus, you had the field goal taken off the board, another bad interception from Seattle. This game was pretty close, and I don't necessarily think it was DC playing bad. I think it was just, Seattle, just was playing pretty good, but just made a couple really costly mistakes. And, with that running game that they had, those running backs looked very good, and they were getting enough production, I think, out of the passing game. Seattle could be a tough opponent coming up for a lot of clubs.
Well, let me jump in, Vince, because Seattle, they played well, but then I think Jim Zorn didn't do them any favors. They only ran the ball 21 times, and they were almost running it at close to 5 yards per carry. Run the ball, Jim Zorn. If this team can't run the ball, they can't win, and they did not run the ball enough. And if they did, they would have avoided the mistakes, flat out.
Well, I think they're still trying to find their footing. As all these teams are, they're trying to feel each other out. They're trying to feel themselves out. But I feel like, there appears to be some promise there. I don't think you could really deny that.
They were 3 for 5 on 4th down, and the Defenders were 2 for 2 on 4th down in that game. Bryant, what stood out? We were there. You watched it on television. Totally different perspective.
Yeah, the coaching battle I mentioned to you a lot, especially on our recap. Our recap of another game that I brought up. That the coaching battle between Pep Hamilton and Jim Zorn was a lot of fun. Just different, two very different coaching styles. Here's the one thing I've noticed, and the DC Defenders. Everybody says that they're one of the better teams, and I agree. They did look like one of the better teams, but they were very one-dimensional when it came to their offense. They had those 2 defensive scores. But they didn't really rush the ball, and Cardale Jones can't do it all himself. with New York coming into town, they allowed over 150 yards rushing, I believe, to Tampa Bay. We'll get into that in a little bit. So if DC can get to those numbers rushing the ball, then I think they're in a good spot. But really, they only had, I think, less than 60 yards rushing total for that game. You're not going to win a lot of football games like that.
Yeah, you're right. The defenders made the plays in all three phases. That's what won them the game, because really, if you look at the box score in terms of team stats, Seattle won a lot of key categories, and just the turnovers killed them. And that's that easily was the difference. Also, some penalty yardage, but they were efficient. They were decent in the red zone. Not good enough. The defenders weren't good at all. They didn't even score in the red zone. 0-2, but they pulled out the victory, and now they're going to host the New York Guardians in Week 2, a matchup of two 1-0 teams, two teams that looked pretty damn good, if you ask me. Cardale Jones looked great as advertised, and then Seattle hosting 0-1 Tampa Bay. And Seattle also, Austin Proehl, Vince, got to mention him on this show. 5 catches, 88 yards, 2 touchdowns, looked like a special weapon to go along with that three-headed monster, those 3 dragon running backs in Seattle. I think that offense has promise, but they gotta feed the dragon. Feed those running backs, don't they?
Yeah, they absolutely do. Those cats were running. They were running hard, no doubt about that. And you talked about the Austin Proehl. This kid was a just solid receiver at University of North Carolina, and he's showing that same kind of stuff with the Seattle Dragons.
Well, another great thing too that I'll say real quick, Alan, is that in this league, more so than in the NFL and in college football, when you're down, you could still run the football. I think it's going to take the coaches a little bit of time to adjust to that, because usually when you're down, you don't rush. Well, in this league, you can because of the way the time management works. Yeah. So I think Jim Zorn will go back to that if he's back into this same instance later on this season.
Yeah. Speaking of comeback scenarios and things like that, one thing I want to throw out that I think is going to be huge, not just for DC and Seattle for next week, but for all these teams, is that these conversions after touchdowns are just so critical to me. Much more critical than what I was giving it credit for. And, DC was trying a bunch of wild stuff with, switching quarterbacks, having Tyree Jackson in there, and just couldn't find much success. Teams who get that straightened out, that's a major advantage going forward.
You get those PATs, you are going to be looking good. I mean, at the end of the season, I think that might be a pretty telling stat. Total extra points converted. In this game, both teams got 1 each, and they both scored 1-pointers. So the difference, huge glaring turnover discrepancy. The Dragons fall because of that. But going back home, Jake, you said fans won't be worried, and the Dragons shouldn't be worried. I think they don't have a lot to fix except those turnovers going home, and they should be good. This team looked like they can win some ball games.
Yeah, I mean, they turned the ball over on downs after that 4th down stop by DC. If they would have got it there, it still would have been a 1-score game, potentially just a field goal away to tie the game. So you're right, that game could have gone either way, but it went in favor of the defenders this week.
Yeah, it did. They made some big plays. They made the splash plays, and the DC defenders win 31-19. Excuse me. Cardale Jones. He might be MVP, but I don't know. The next guy we're going to talk about, oh man, he was my pick for MVP, and I am feeling pretty damn confident. I'm not giving away a Who Made Allen Look Good award, Bryant, but if I did, you know who it'd go to. Let's talk about that Houston and LA Wildcats game.
Walker with time takes the shot. Cam Phillips caught. Touchdown, Renegades.
Yes, that was Kurt Menefee calling the Roughnecks the Renegades, unfortunately, but the Roughnecks, he straightened it out, beat the LA Wildcats 37-17 with P.J. Walker just dominating. 4 touchdowns, 272 yards through the air, 2 bombas down the field, elusiveness. I mean, what more could you ask for from a quarterback in Week 1, Vince? P.J. Walker flat out balling, top fantasy player, and your XFL MVP after 1 week.
Yeah, and Rookie of the Year, I might add. This was a quarterback situation where, all of us were kind of split on, who should start, him or Connor Cook. And I'll say P.J. Walker delivered. He dropped a couple right in the bucket. Just excellent throws on the move, no doubt. And you got to be pleased with what this kid was able to do in June Jones's offense. And he proved he is Temple tough.
Oh, man, I just like seeing P.J. Walker scramble to his left and then make that turn and just flick it down the field. He did that a few times in this game, and it was the most beautiful thing to watch of all 4 games.
People are making a huge deal about that, those kind of plays being made by Patrick Mahomes, where you're getting it in the XFL right now with P.J. Walker.
Yeah, and just for a little context about, talking about people watching week 1 and having a good showing, whenever Vince and I stopped at a local fast food joint on the way home, this game was on the TV.
Nice.
Yeah. That's real rap right there.
Well, someone has said that Jake's a big exhibit fan, so we got to get that out there one day. Here's what I would work on. Yeah, Jake, aren't you an exhibit man?
Let's just keep going with it.
I thought he's a DMX guy. Whatever.
Here's what I would say for the Wildcats if they want to fix what they need to do to win in week 2 against the Dallas Renegades. 3rd down. 3 out of 15 on 3rd downs, not going to do it for you. Norm Chow has the plays. He showed great promise. That offense did as well in that first half. They tapered off, obviously, in the second half. I think that'll be the story. I know Pepper Johnson is no longer with the team, so the defense now becomes the story as well. But to me, can the offense do what they did in the first quarter? Because you remember, they had a chance to take that lead going into the half with a field goal. There was some miscommunication, a penalty, and really just didn't get a chance to kick that last field goal. But the Wildcats, to me, look like a better team in the first half than they did in the second half. They look like 2 opposite teams. Now the question is, which team shows up for week 2 at Dignity Health Sports Park?
Yeah, I mean, I got to give a lot of credit to the Houston Roughnecks, and they're scheming on defense. They ended up in that second half just stifling LA. 25 unanswered points, sacked 5 times between Jalen McClendon and Chad. Was it Knopf who got sacked every time? I don't know. He was getting hit hard too. He ended up getting hurt, and no Josh Johnson out there. How important was that in this game, Vince? If Josh Johnson was out there, what do you think would that have made a difference?
It's hard to say. In the end, I truly believe that Houston was the better team on this day. Yeah, maybe LA would have scored a little bit more, but Houston, it didn't look like they were able to stop Houston. So in the end, I don't think it would have made that much of a difference.
Well, with what Ted Cottrell had schemed up in that second half, with his D-line breathing fire, I mean, they were fuming at the mouth getting after quarterbacks. 5 sacks, they look great. And we didn't talk enough about that going into the game, but the Roughnecks D-line really showed some promise as one of the better units across the league defensively. And now Houston will line up against St. Louis at home at TD-ECU Stadium in week 2. LA will make their home debut against the Dallas Renegades. 2 crucial matchups, but that LA one game, Jake, you called it. You said it was the first must-win game of the season.
Yeah, I think it is. But then again, on the same, on the other hand, you're going to have Landry Jones fresh off installing a bathtub in somebody's house, coming on the field trying to get a win for Dallas, and Coach Stoops, who is actually coaching in the league.
Yeah.
So LA will be figuring out their defensive situation with Pepper Johnson fired. Also, you've got Anthony Kimbo Johnson tweeting out free agent. We'll see his status. No official word yet on that, Brian, as of the live taping of the podcast. But, I mean, a guy that you thought would be a leader on the team. Also, if he exits that locker room, tumultuous to say the least for the LA Wildcats, at least from an outsider's perspective. If it all could get remedied, though, with a victory at Dignity Health Park this weekend against the Dallas Renegades.
A 10-week season victories are important. Do I say it's a must-win? I still think it's a little too early for that, but change, promise. You need to get that out of your team this week for sure for the LA Wildcats.
Yep, and the Houston Roughnecks, I mean, they're happy as a hog and slop right now, looking like one of the best teams, if not the best team in the XFL. PJ Walker just looking like a absolute beast on the field. He said he plays like he's the best player on the field every time he goes out there. He showed it. Amazing, amazing debut for the Houston Roughnecks quarterback. June Jones's team, 1-0. They host 1-0 St. Louis, and we'll get to St. Louis after we go back to the East, where I was, and those Guardians defeated the Tampa Bay Vipers 23-3.
Murray over the middle, and what a catch! Absorbing the hit, it's Truesdell. A one-hander and the hit. He's all the way out across the 40-yard line for a 27-yard gain. Wow.
I know the Vipers lost the game. I could just say greatest catch in XFL history, Vince. Nick Truesdell on that 27-yard juggling catch. He got popped and still hung on, and then he fumbled a couple plays later.
Yeah, I was going to say, it wasn't all good for Mr. Truesdale, but it was a hell of a catch, no doubt about that.
Yeah, New York's defensive backs, they weren't making anything easy. 2 interceptions, 8 passes defended as a team. We hyped them up, Vince. We told you, and they went out there and they proved it. Again, hey, Bryant, you could have said the Guardians secondary for your award this week, too. They made you look pretty good, but not hard to do. We saw them in practice. That unit is the truth. They proved it against the Vipers, Vince.
Yeah, they did, although I will say, Aaron Murray, this kid, you could tell by watching all 4 of these games that this kid has the most raw talent out of any of the quarterbacks that played. But, it kind of shows why he was, just a 5th-round pick in the NFL. Didn't quite do anything there. And, he's just not, I don't know what it is. It just doesn't click. It's just not getting there for him. It's a shame, and the Vipers got to figure something out because they were able to move the football, but at the end of the day, no touchdowns, and you can't win like that.
Yeah, I mean they were moving it down the field, but it's just if you're throwing the ball in the end zone, throw it where only your receiver can get it. Some underthrown passes. We were talking about the secondary of the Guardians, but whenever you underthrow it, you're just going to get picked off. I mean, the stats were, what was it? Tampa Bay was inside New York's 36 times, but only came up with 3 points. Not good enough.
Yeah, and some reckless
Great
throws.
Stat, Jake. Where'd you come up with that?
Reckless throws, too, from Murray whenever they did get into scoring position. He just didn't protect the ball, but also I think he had guys down the field that either he didn't see him, didn't feel like he could make the throw. I don't know what, but I thought offensively Tampa Bay looked like they could have something, Bryant. We talked about this in the recap, but Aaron Murray, for whatever reason, didn't make those throws. Also, a great Guardians defense made them look bad, 23-3 bad. It was the biggest whooping of the weekend. People were saying on social media and at the stadium, Quentin Flowers over Aaron Murray. I heard some of that. What did you think now that you've had some time to digest that game?
How do you bench a quarterback when you have almost 400 yards of total offense in the game? This team is close. I said it in our recap that they just need to put it together. They had some great movement, some unfortunate turnovers. Nick Truesdell had some very big highs, but also had some very low lows in that game. If they can put it together, if they can tighten it up a little bit, I think they'll be fine. But my thing, and I told this to Vince, and I think Vince, you're showing a little pit bias here. I think Matt McGloin was the most accurate passer all weekend long. He looked a lot better than the way, Vince, you had been hyping him or not hyping him up going into the game. I think you got to give him a little bit of credit the way he performed for the New York Guardians.
He did all right, I suppose. I mean, didn't have to do very much, whenever your defense only allows 3 points. I'd have to go back and watch all the tape and take a look at, the completion percentages and drops.
Well, if you're going by completion percentages, then Philip Nelson was number one, 79% with that air raid. And then Tom, who was not far behind at 74. McGloin was only at 52, Bryant. So not the most accurate passer.
Yeah, but you got to watch it.
He made
plays.
Look
at the stats. Some of those were confusion plays where he thought the receiver would be here and not there. When he made those accurate passes, and it's like that stat in baseball. It's like when he makes contact, he's a 800 hitter, but he strikes out half the time. You're right.
Well, I think it depends on if people are pitching the contact.
52% of is not a great completion percentage, but when he made those throws that he needed to make, they were very accurate, very clean, hit his receivers in stride. I think there's some promise there, too, for the New York Guardians. Look, to me, Tampa Bay should have won this game. They got close enough many times and came up with only 3 points. I think the Vipers are going to be fine. What is that about?
They got beat by 20 points, bro.
Dude,
you're trying to tell me they should have won this game.
They should.
When you have 400 yards of offense, you're in the red zone 4 times inside the 36 and come up with 3 points. You're right. You probably shouldn't win the game, but you could have won the game because you had the opportunities. Your team is strong enough to have won this game. You just got to put it together.
Well, I'm gonna try to save Bryant here. I'm with you. I like Tampa still coming out of this, but they did get taken to the woodshed. They lost by 20, and they turned the ball over. They didn't make any big plays the way that New York did in terms of getting in the end zone. What this team did was move the ball well. And if you do that, then you have, a footing to go off of. You've got something to work with, and there definitely is something to work with for the Tampa Bay Vipers offensively. But when you get to the red zone, you must score, and you cannot turn the ball over. Also, they didn't get after McGloin at all. They didn't sack him. He was clean. And that's something they need to work on also. That defensive line did not do much for Tampa Bay. And, quite frankly, if they're not getting after quarterbacks and they're not getting into the end zone, that's a recipe for a 20-point loss. So they have things to work on both sides of the ball, but they have things that looked good. They had a running back who was, almost at 5 yards a pop. And if you're doing that, you run the ball more. Smith had 79 yards in this game, but when you're down 20, you're not going to run a whole lot. The Vipers had something to work with. New York looked like a complete team. I think they can win in a variety of ways. That secondary is awesome. That defensive line even was good. They got after the quarterback, after Murray, and after Flowers, who, he got mauled on that last offensive play they had too. Yikes. No Flowers to play a QB for me either. Keep Murray in there, see what you got, and figure out your red zone offense, and you should be fine, Tampa.
I'd play Cornelius.
You'd play Taylor Cornelius week 2 already?
Yeah.
Why is that?
He's a good mix between the two. This kid, is. He knows how to run an offense at Oklahoma State, and he knows how to run an XFL kind of offense. I think this guy is tailor-made for the XFL. I'd love to see him out there. I really would.
I see what you did there. We'll keep an eye on it, but I have a feeling Murray's going to get another shot when Tampa Bay goes to Seattle this week, and then you have the Guardians, like we said, going to D.C. in what might be the matchup of the week in week 2. But let's wrap up week number 1 now and talk about the Battlehawks' big victory, only road team to win when they went and beat the Dallas Renegades.
Keith Ford takes it into the end zone. A 16-yard touchdown run to give St. Louis its first ever lead.
Jake, do you think the Dallas Renegades lost because they had to breathe in all those fumes running through the tunnel at the beginning of the game?
Well, it certainly didn't help. I'll say that with emissions and everything we know about that right now. My question is to Vince. Vince, you've been talking about Hell Mummy, quite frankly, for years. To me personally, and they got 3 field goals in this game. It's better than 1 field goal, but discuss that.
Well, this kid that was playing the backup quarterback that played for Landry Jones,
Philip Nelson.
This kid was just no good. That's really what it came down to. He was scared to throw the ball down the field. He just kept dumping it off. And, eventually St. Louis was able to catch on to that. And whenever he did throw deep, he was nowhere even close. It was just a bad performance. You could draw the best plays you want, but the execution's just not there. And whenever Landry gets in there, I think we're going to see a completely different offense.
So if Landry would have been playing on Sunday, would Dallas have won that game?
They would have. I mean, granted, somebody's drywall wouldn't have been put up, but Dallas would have won that game.
Well, I called it. I told you Landry Jones not playing would give the Battlehawks an opening, and they took it. Jordan Ta'amu, I thought, was marvelous, efficient, 20 of 27. He had the long runs when they needed him, 77 yards on the ground. Him and Matt Jones made for an excellent lethal pair on the ground.
That was really the difference.
Yeah.
I mean, running a Ta'amu.
Yeah. Yeah, and Hayes had something cooking. And then they had adversity, too, Vince, where Chuck Long's headset went out to the offense, and he had to relay to Hayes, who relayed to the offense, and they still pulled it off, held on to win. Maybe it's because Nelson was out there. I don't know, but the Battlehawks defense came up looking like we talked about, too. They'd be good. They'd fly around. And then the offense, efficient enough. They scored enough. A great win on the road. Can't ask for anything more. Lots to work with. And I could see Ta'amu improving upon that and becoming the most dangerous player in this league next to P.J. Walker with all the tools he has. Bryant, what about you? We talked about this in the mini-sode recap but Vince just said Landry Jones in the game, they win. We didn't really talk about that. We want to break down the game as we saw it, but if Landry Jones played, what do you think? Would it have made a difference?
Well, we said holy air raid, right? 42 pass attempts from Philip Nelson, 33 completions, 79 pass percentage. But you're right, Vince. A lot of those shorties, only 209 yards. That's not the way the air raid offense is really built to last. You got to get those longer passes. He did have Parham, the tight end, the big tight end. But could have Dallas won that game with Landry Jones? Of course. They were a couple plays away as well. The Battlehawks look great. Jordan Ta'amu, probably runner-up to me on who would be MVP so far this season. The kid looked great. Yeah, I mean, he looked great all game long. He was consistent. He was moving around. He was moving the pocket. He made St. Louis look better than... You and I are not going to be friends at the end of this episode for after a while, I think. Vince is what's
if you're saying Jordan Ta'amu looked better than P.J. Walker, you're wrong. He looked good.
I said runner-up. I said runner-up.
Okay, good. Okay,
I don't even know if I'd say that. I mean, he looked okay, but
he'd probably have my second place vote. Yeah, I'm with you there, Brian.
He ran the ball very effectively. At the same time, he took some horrible sacks. It wasn't tremendously accurate. And in an offense that only
74% completion percentage. What are you talking about? If you're going to dog me on completion percentages with Matt McGloin, I'm going to throw it right back at you with the 74 for Jordan Ta'amu, almost responsible for 300 yards. I mean, come on.
In an offense that only put up 15 points. So, I mean, I'm not going to get overly excited about that.
You shouldn't, but you should also respect the fact that they went on the road. It was week one.
Oh, I do.
I think they're only going to get better from that, honestly. And that defense, I think, is legit. With Landry Jones in the game, still, they might have been able to go downfield, but Battlehawks secondary looked pretty solid with Kenny Robinson and Will Hill both making big plays.
Yeah, Jake, anytime you could come away with a victory in that poor of air quality, you got to feel pretty good about yourself.
Yeah, you're right. You got to take it. It could be the difference between making it into the postseason and watching it at home.
Well, Jake, what'd you think real quick as we wrap up? Dallas is going to go on the road against L.A. next week on Sunday. St. Louis is on the road still, staying in Texas, and they will take on the Houston Roughnecks, and that is also a Sunday. That's a Sunday afternoon game. But, Jake, what'd you think of the stadium, the converted baseball park for football? How'd you think that looked on TV?
I think it looked good on TV. It's a much bigger venue than at DC whenever we were at. I think we all favor those smaller MLS-style fields, but of course you're not going to be able to get those in all 8 locations. But yeah, it was ready in time. There were concerns about that months ago. And I think enough Renegades fans showed up and were passionate enough to make it look good on television.
Well, that was week one, and as we close up week one, Bryant, where does that leave us? We all submitted power rankings individually to you. You put your algorithm together. You multiplied and did math. Math is hard, but sports makes math fun. What did it collectively say in terms of power rankings from our show?
Well, I'll start at the bottom, and we were all kind of on par. Vince, I'm going to call you out on one just real quick here at the very end, but we had the Wildcats at number 8, the Dragons at number 7, the Renegades at number 6, Vipers after that at 5, the St. Louis Battlehawks number 4, Guardians number 3, Defenders number 2, and the Roughnecks number 1. Vince, you had the Vipers to number 4 on your power rankings. I assume you think they look kind of good at least.
Yeah, I mean, you could tell that there's a lot there. You know, they only scored 3 points, but at the same time, you know, they were able to move the football. It just seems like, maybe if they make a quarterback change or some tweaks to that offense, they could do a lot better.
Those are the averages you read. Is that correct?
Those were the averages of all 4 of our power rankings here.
Was I the only one who had New York number 2?
Oh, yes.
I had New York too.
Hold on. I'm going in.
I think I had them number 3.
Yeah, so the reason... so it was really a split between DC and New York. It was really a split between DC and New York because DC had 2 two-place votes and 2 third-place votes, and the same thing with New York. So DC just goes forward because they scored more points.
Oh, is that that's the algorithm? All right,
that's the algorithm. I don't know. I put it in the computer; it spits it out. What do you want me to do?
I respect that, but I think the Guardians are my number 2 team behind Houston. The Guardians' defense looked ferocious. DC gave up some big plays to the Dragons. That's why that was the deciding factor for me. I don't know about whoever else had New York at number 2, but I mean, we'll see that matchup next week. Week 2's got to be the matchup, at least for me, and that is coming first. That's the Saturday afternoon game, 2 o'clock on ABC. Cannot wait for that one. Check out those power rankings, though. We'll get those posted right here inside the feed on all podcast apps or on XFL.com for you to peruse and disagree with and let us know what you think at XFL Show. Week 1 in the books, our first week of XFL football wrap-up. Jake, it's in the books. How'd it go?
Oh, it's in the books. It went well. I have questions about how somebody has Tampa Bay higher than Seattle after scoring 3 points, but we don't have enough time to elaborate more.
Yeah, I'm one of those people, and to explain myself might take too much time, but we are out of that. We got to get out of here and start planning for our Thursday evening show. Late Thursday evening, we'll have another episode for you where we are going to preview Week 2 thoroughly, hopefully get you some good, crisp interviews and some access to players or coaches from these teams. We're trying to reach out, working hard to try to get the schedule right so we can bring them to you. They are busy, though, preparing for week number 2. Some of these teams, well, according to Jake, it's do or die week already, Bryant. They've got everything to lose this week.
You could probably lose the season this week. I don't think you're going to win it. A lot of things on the line for some teams out there, for sure. Special thanks to everyone at the XFL headquarters there for helping us out on Twitter, as well as the work that they're putting in. This was a lot. I got sappy on Saturday morning. I know you saw that. That was me on Twitter if you saw it at XFL Show. But really was just a full-on effort for 2 years to get this thing together. And I'm happy that we did our part. Everyone did their part. You fans did your part. And the XFL, at least for 1 week, was a success. And we'll just keep this momentum rolling through the season. Make sure you follow us at XFL Show on Twitter and Instagram. Catch our show every single week on XFL.com. There is actually a new tab for our show, too. So we're on the Videos Plus tab. No longer the news. So check that out. And also on YouTube.com/XFL, the official YouTube channel of the XFL.
Yeah, buddy. Vince, we have been immortalized on Fox. Bryant gets recognized when he goes out, but we are forever a part of the first broadcast of the XFL on Fox, so I think we've got one up on him now.
Yeah, I'd say so. As I said, we know what the hell we're talking about here. This is the XFL Show.
I'm big in Canada. I didn't even bring that up, but I'm huge in Canada.
But the XFL is good for America, this country. Although we do appreciate all of our Canadian listeners north of the border, and I encourage them all to watch the XFL on TSN or wherever they get their good, crisp football.
Yeah, it's on TSN up in Canada. Again, shout out to all of our XFL fans watching all over the world and listening to this show all over the world, because they do. We know we've got some German listeners. We've got some listeners over in England. That's true, Vince. What are you laughing about? We are worldwide.
They have a lot of passion over there in Germany.
They do.
I even heard some people from Salzburg are watching.
You know Salzburg, yes. Mozart.
Montreal, yes.
And the XFL, baby. We are worldwide on This is the XFL Show. So wherever you're listening, we thank you for subscribing. And, of course, going to XFL.com, which is just jam-packed now, full of content. Getting ready for this show was super fun, just being on there, looking at highlights, reading stats. It's all there now for you on XFL.com. We will be back with another episode. That is late Thursday night, so wait for it, and we will preview week number 2. Oh, man, so much to look forward to this week. Can a team lose the entire week this week? The LA Wildcats, a lot going on there. The Tampa Bay Vipers in a tough situation, having to go all the way to Seattle. We're going to break it all down. Cannot wait for it. But until then, let's put a bow on this one. For Vince, for Jake, for Bryant, I'm Alan. This is the XFL Show. Remember,
they're listening.